In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a table with a removable leaf in the middle. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut two 2x8s at 81.5 inches. And then I'm going to cut 6 2x4s at the same length of 81.5 inches. Once I get my 2x4s and my 2x8s cut to 81.5 inches, I'm going to set up my table saw to basically cut off 1/8 of an inch on each side. Now this will allow for a nice smooth finish, that way whenever I butt all the boards up to one another, I'll have little to no space between them. Alright, now comes the fun part of using a drill to drill all the pocket holes for the screws. Really a biscuit joint is probably a little bit better for this, but if you don't have one, this is the next best thing, is using screws. Alright, now that we got all those holes drilled, what we're going to do next, we're going to grab our 2-inch screws and we're going to start putting this together. When we put the glue on here, we want to make sure that we put a good amount, but also that we smear it around. We have a nice even layer along the whole edge of the board there. And then whenever we screw it together, I recommend using some clamps to kind of hold it together, make sure it's nice and secure, and also to make sure it has a nice smooth surface on the top side. Now you may notice when you're putting this together that it may try to buckle up or something. If you notice here, I have a 2x4 laid across and I have a clamp on each corner. This is a very important step, that as soon as you get all those screws in and get that put together, that you set it up like this and let it sit for a good couple hours. Let that glue really settle and bond to that wood. But you want to make sure it's flat and even. While that glue is drying there, one thing we can do here is grab that last 2x8 and cut 2 at 34 inches. Now you should measure your table and make sure your width is at 34 inches, maybe off by 1/8 or at most 1/4. But whatever your width of your table is, go ahead and cut 2 of them at that length there. And once you get those 2 cut, and go ahead and set up your table saw and cut off 1/8 or so, just to be able to give a nice smooth edge. And this will be the 2 end pieces for the table. Now that we have those 2x8s cut, I'm going to go ahead and add my glue here and make sure I spread it around nice and evenly. And I'm going to put my pocket holes in and go ahead and grab my 2-inch screws and screw this to the end of the boards here. Now, it's not always a good practice to screw into the end grain of the wood, which is the end here. But since we're going to have other support that we'll add here in a little bit, and we're using wood glue, the screws are really just kind of hold it in place until we add that extra support. Now, once we finish applying these 2 2x8s to each end of the table here, we're going to go ahead and cut 2 2x4s at 92 inches and 2 2x4s at 27 inches. And what we're going to work on here is what's called the skirt or the apron. What we're going to start with is grab those 2 longer 2x4s and apply it to each side on the underside of the table. And kind of give it a 2-inch reveal all the way around. And we'll grab those 2 shorter 27 inches and put it in between the 2 longer ones here, and just use pocket holes to kind of screw it all the way around. Again, you can use just 2-inch screws. And once you get this all applied, it'll kind of look like a box underneath the table here. And this is what the legs will tie to and be able to screw to and kind of give it more stability and strength. Once I got that skirt all nice and finished, I went ahead and grabbed my 4x4, and I'm going to cut 4 of these to 29 1/4. And once I'm done cutting all 4 of these, I'm going to go ahead and set up my saw to a 30.6 degree angle. And I'm going to cut about a 1/4 inch from the end of it. And this just kind of gives it a nice little bevel look, just to kind of change it up a little bit. This step isn't necessary, it's just preference, but this is just one way you can do it. Alright, now that those legs are cut, what we're going to do now, I'm just going to kind of show you how to kind of cut a flat surface on this corner here. The first thing I'm going to do is grab my speed square and measure over 1 3/4 and just make a mark there and kind of make a mark all the way up. And then I'm going to turn it over, I'm going to go ahead and measure 3 inches up. And this will kind of give me a kind of a rectangle on one side here that I'll go ahead and mark 1 3/4 over by 3.5 inches up. And once I get that, I'm just going to kind of make a line across, kind of darken that in that way I can see it real well and cut. And just kind of flip it over and do it to the next side here. Again, just do 1 3/4 over by 3 inches up. Make a line and mark it. And this is kind of something what it would look like here. And then once you get that, go ahead and I'm just going to put another line here to connect it on the bottom side, just to kind of give me a reference off of and give me something to be able to cut here when I use my circular saw. And once I get my saw here, I'm going to go ahead and set that saw to a 45-degree angle. Every saw is a little bit different, but they're almost the same. Just go ahead and adjust it to 45-degree angles here. And once you have your 45-degree angles, tighten that up. And I'm going to go ahead and cut from the bottom side here and just kind of cut upwards until I hit my 3.5 inch mark up the board here. And once I get this cut here, I'm going to go ahead and flatten that saw back out just to back to 0 degrees and go ahead and, as you see here, just kind of cut across the top of it here. And once I get those 2 cuts made, I'm just going to grab my handsaw here just to kind of finish the cut. And once I have that, as you can see here, you kind of have a nice flat surface to screw to. And once I have my 2x4 here to be able to screw to, this is what actually attaches to the skirt or the bottom of the table here. Once I do that to all 4 legs, I'm going to grab 2x4 and cut it a 45-degree angle on each side. About 7 inches long, it'll be about an 1/8 inch shorter than what you'll want, and you'll screw it to the leg first and then screw 2 screws to each of the corners there, and this will really give a nice secure attachment for that leg. Now we're kind of starting to look like a table here, and our next step, what we're going to do is we're going to grab some 80 grit sandpaper and go ahead and give this kind of a nice sanding here. Just kind of going with the grain of the wood, getting rid of any rough edges or any high spots. And no matter how hard you try, there's going to be a little bit here and there. But go ahead and get that a nice, good sanding, nice, even sanding all the way around. Now, if you just wanted to stop here, you could have yourself just an 8-foot table and you'd be done, really. You just kind of choose your stain, or if you wanted to paint, whatever you wanted to do. But if you wanted to learn how to do the leaf part, that's what we're going to start on next. All right, the first thing I'm going to start with here is I'm going to find the dead center of the table, which should be approximately 43 inches. And I'm going to measure a foot to the left and to the right of the dead center there. That way I can have a nice 2-foot section that I can cut out, and this will actually be my leaf. Once I get that top portion cut, I'm just going to grab my handsaw and kind of finish cutting it by hand. That way it's a nice clear cut. I'm also going to have some boards on the table. That way it doesn't kind of collapse in on itself. Once I finish that, I'm going to take the table, flip it upside down, and put it on my bench here. And grab my slides. And I'm going to put about 4 inches off of the skirt there. And close them all the way. And then open them about 1/4 inch. And then I'll go ahead and screw those to the bottom of the table. Make sure I put some wood glue underneath there also. Now that we have our slides on, if you needed to put any wood filler in any kind of gaps or any kind of holes or anything, it'll be a good time. Once that dries, go ahead and sand it with 120 grit sandpaper. Just kind of get it one more time. And after that, we're going to go ahead and grab our stain. And after we wipe it off, and go ahead and apply the stain. Just make sure we're going to grain the wood and being careful not to spill the stain like I did here. But after that, it's all nice and stained. It ought to be good to go. Let it dry. And if you need to, go ahead and put on a second coat. And once you have that second coat on, it just depends what you do on the legs. I just chose to go ahead and paint them white to kind of give it a good contrast here. And you could stain it, you could paint it. It's just your preference, what you prefer to do at this point. Once I finished painting, it was dry enough for me to go and put on my second coat. So I got that second coat on. Once that's on, I'm going to go ahead and start putting my polyurethane on here. Just using a paintbrush, just lightly applying it. Again, going with the grain of the wood and just giving it a nice good layer here. Once you finish applying that polyurethane, you want to give it a good 6 to 8 hours to dry. I live in a drier environment, so it dries fairly quickly. But once you're done, grab your 220 grit sandpaper and just kind of go over it real nice here. You notice it start turning white. It kind of looks like you're running it, but it's supposed to look like this. And once you get all the sanding done, go ahead and grab a rag and start wiping it off. Just kind of a damp rag. Give it a good wipe, get rid of all that extra dust, and go ahead and put on your second layer here. And once you finish with that second layer, it's up to you how many more layers you want to put on. I usually like to put 3 layers. That gives a nice, good, glossy shine to it. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you learned something new. If you like my video, please subscribe to my page. I'm going to try to put up some more how-to and DIY videos. That way you can do your own affordable backyard woodworking.